Okay, now let me take these off. Let me hold your hand when I say this. um, I'm still not done with this bug, so be patient with me. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The second thing I'm going to say is that, as always, here in the Daily Huddle, and especially in Spiritual Matters Thursdays, we are really committed to elevating and pushing back on ideas and assumptions that we may have so that you can think differently, so that you can expand your way of thinking, so that you can see possibilities that you wouldn't otherwise have seen. And today's no different with creating a tantric date for Valentine's Day, since we are in that season. So I want to back up and say, first, let's define Tantra. Because a lot of times what happens, and put a one in the chat if this is true for you. A lot of times what happens is that people hear Tantra and they hear, ooh, lingerie, ooh, freaky deaky, ooh, really sexy, beastie type of deal. That's what you hear when you hear Tantra. Put a one in the chat if that's true for you. If it's not true for you, say not me. And that's fine. We're all evolved here. Okay. So let's first define what Tantra is. Cece said not me. Okay. Hey, I got it. Tantra is an ancient spiritual and philosophical practice that originated in Africa and then moved up to India. And while many people associate it solely with sexuality, to Tantra is about deep connection, it's about presence, it's about energy flow. You can be tantric at a restaurant eating dinner. It integrates breath work, meditation, and sacred ritual to cultivate intimacy and heightened awareness and spiritual unity, both with yourself and a partner. And it could just really be with yourself, even. So, in the context of relationships and intimacy, tantric practices help partners slow down, be present with each other, connect with each other on a soul deep level. It's not just about physical pleasure, although it includes that, but it's not just about that. It's about energetic alignment. It's about emotional depth. It's about divine love. So, with that said, a tantric date isn't just dinner and chocolates and then some nookie at the end. It's an intentional experience where both of you drop into the moment and you heighten your senses. You explore deep intimacy. Now, I want to say something about the culture that we're in. We are in a very transactional culture. Yeah. And so many times, as you guys know, I'm a business coach and really a leadership coach, because a lot of the conversations that I have start with business strategy, but end up being about spirituality and about leadership. And a lot of the times what happens is that the thing that stands in the way of somebody's business success isn't a business strategy. It's usually some unconscious belief, some limiting belief, some conflict that they have with being unequally yoked with their partner, or whatever the case may be. And I say that to say that it's transactional. It's a transactional culture when you can't even touch your partner without thinking, oh, this means we're going to get some, right? That it's like this is the precursor to this exchange of energy that we're going to do later, as opposed to just for the moment, this is what's happening and there's no agenda, right? Transactions have agenda. And so when you think about the ways in which we think about sex in this culture, the ways that we think about intimacy in this culture. In fact, in this culture, intimacy and sex are synonymous, right? Although they by definition are not. Intimacy is way bigger than just sex. You can be intimate with your child. You can be intimate with a friend. In fact, we have experienced intimacy with people who we will never experience sexually. Think about, people in the military who have gone through war together, or who have gone through basic training together, or who have seen somebody die. Um, a lot of times, trauma or pain or grief or a very big emotional event bonds people and creates intimacy that they wouldn't otherwise have created. And so, what I'm talking about today is about creating intimacy deliberately. Do not wait for a trauma bond. Do not wait for a huge emotional event in order to push people together, because you guys just have to depend on each other to deal with the grief or the pain. So, here's how to drop into the moment, how to heighten your senses and explore deep intimacy. It first begins with intention, right? So if you want to set the atmosphere for sacred connection, one of the ways that you can do that is to create a sensual environment. Now, hear me when I say this. When I say sensual, I mean the senses, right? Do you hear that? Do you hear that when I say sensual, I mean senses? Sensual, senses, sensual. Oh my God, I'm being so silly. That's important because sometimes when people hear sensual environment, they're like, ooh, right? I'm trying to audit your assumptions here. Okay. So when you create a sensual environment, that means visual, the lighting. You might light candles, you might use soft fabrics, you might use cushions, you might use music, you might incorporate essential oils. Like ylang ylang or sandalwood or rose to awaken your senses. You might play some meditative or really slow music, something soothing with deep vibrations to kind of get you present. You don't want frenetic music. You want music that's going to ground you. And then for extra credit, prepare a cleansing ritual, like a sensual shower or a bath together, or washing each other's bodies slowly, or symbolizing purification before sacred intimacy. Now, this is why some of these exercises that I suggest to you can be so confronted, because sometimes we go through life without checking where we are with certain things until we come to that particular situation. Like if I ask you to go take a shower, a sensual, intimate, slow, be present shower with your significant other, some of y'all might say, well, I ain't got no significant other. So that's assumption number one, right? Assumption number two, be like, we don't fit in the shower together. We don't look like what we got married as. Excuse me. Number three, you might feel self-conscious. Um, I don't know what's happening with my blurry camera. Let me come in and out. Usually that fixes it. You might feel self-conscious about your body. Maybe you've gotten older. Thank you, Chase. Um, Maybe I have some here. It's just that, I get caught up in what I'm saying. Maybe you've gotten older. Maybe there are some things that are wrinkly that weren't wrinkly before, or bigger, or cellulite, or, a little fluff around the belly area, or whatever the case may be. But I want you to know something. Hear me well. The body that you are in, or the body that you embody, isn't your entire body. You're actually bigger than your physical presence. And you know that because you can actually think of somebody and evoke a memory in your mind just simply by remembering a particular smell and not necessarily physically touching that person. You can think of something they said or a smile or look at a picture, etc., and their physical presence immediately comes to mind when you have a trigger like that. So I want you to know that you're bigger than your body, and your body and its condition is not an indictment into who you are. Okay. So that's the first thing, is to be intentional about creating sacred connection and create a sensual environment in that way, using all of your senses, the visuals with the lights or candles, touch, tactile with fabrics or cushions, smell, the sense of smell with using essential oils like ylang ylang or sandalwood or rose to awaken you to your senses. The auditory sense by playing meditative or romantic music, and then prepare a cleansing ritual. Maybe taking a sensual shower or bath together. The second, open that space with intention and eye gazing. Imagine sitting across your beloved and taking a few deep breaths, holding hands, and you might close your eyes to presence yourself into the moment, set the intention for the evening, love, pleasure, deep connection, trust, etc. And then when you open your eyes, you gaze into each other's eyes for at least 3 to 5 minutes without talking, just syncing your energies, just breathing together, looking at your beloved, taking it all in. Look at their ears, look at their jawline, look at their lips and their nose and their eyebrow arc and their eyes and whatever is happening over here on their forehead, hairline, hair situation, the way the neck falls into the shoulders, like just pay attention to those nuances and those details without saying anything, right? And something interesting will happen, which is that you will start to synchronize your breath. When you sit close facing each other, this happens with children and their mothers. This happens when we're sleeping together. Eventually, we start synchronizing our breath and we inhale and exhale at the same pace. You can also try the yab yum position. Yab yum is when one partner sits on the other's lap and they're just facing each other heart to heart. So imagine your breath merging, creating an energetic loop between you two. And maybe as you're breathing, he's exhaling, or as you're exhaling, he's breathing, and so forth, like that. He or she, whatever, right? And then take turns exploring each other's senses. Maybe even with a blindfold. So you can do stuff like use feathers or silk or ice cubes or warm oil to gently trace each other's bodies, or to taste something, right? So you can have a fruit bowl and with that blindfold, just feed each other. And it's like, oh, then you can guess what you're eating. And let the receiving partner simply surrender to sensation while the giver remains fully present and attuned. And then you can switch, you can take turns. But instead of rushing to the transaction, focus on that slow, intentional touch. In fact, you might not even get to a transaction. Just explore each other with reverence, with curiosity. Massage each other with no goal, just presence. In fact, the goal is presence. And you can whisper affirmations of love, of admiration, of appreciation, acknowledge that person's impact in your life, acknowledge their character that you've noticed independent of what they do for you. I think sometimes we think words of affirmation sound like, I love how you help me do blah, 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 blah. And it's almost like you're affirming the transactional value of that person's presence in your life, as opposed to, I love how generous you are. Like that's you. You're generous, independent of whether you're generous with me or somebody else. You're just a generous person. That's an example, right? And so this is an opportunity for you to focus on that, on your person, without making it about you and without making it a transaction. And it takes practice. It might feel awkward at first. You might get it, a little wobbly the first 2 or 3 times or whatever. That's fine. Keep going. And let the passion build naturally through deep connection rather than force. This is going to require you to be patient. This is going to require you to be present. This is what I mean about in this culture. We live in such a hustle culture that it's like, come on, let's get pleasure in, let's get this thing in before we gotta go to sleep and go to work. Because you're used to being a rat in the wheel. But if you allow yourself to be present in your humanity and allow your humanity to witness and be present with somebody else's humanity, then time will take as long as it takes. And one of my favorite verses in A Course in Miracles says, infinite patience brings immediate results, which means when I'm not in a rush, when I can give patience to a particular moment, it doesn't take as long as I think I need patience for. Right? So you do all of that, tantric touch and slow pleasure and so forth. If you choose to be intimate, slow everything down. Keep eye contact, breathe together, move in full awareness. And if you're not engaging intimately or sexually, then just hold each other in deep presence, feeling the warmth and in that energy exchange. Because I'm willing to bet that it's rare. I'm willing to bet that it's infrequent. So enjoy it, right? Just lather in it, bask in it. And then close with gratitude and reflection. Hold on 1 second, I have to pause. Excuse me. So when you close with gratitude and reflection, just hold each other and reflect. What did you feel? What did you love the most? What did you not enjoy as much? How did this deepen our connection with each other? And then end with a heart-to-heart embrace and deep gratitude. Heart-to-heart means your left side to their left side. And just embrace one another in that way, in deep gratitude and deep solemnity, right? Because a tantric Valentine's date isn't about rushing to a climax. It's about deepening intimacy. It's about fully being present. It's about savoring each moment together. You're literally going counterculture because what's been happening in this culture is that we've been trained, we've been conditioned that you got to move fast, you got to do it fast, you got to get results, you got to move on to the next thing. And so when you're like, no, I'm going to speak slowly, I'm going to breathe slowly, I'm going to look at you slowly, I'm going to take you in slowly, I'm going to enjoy my senses, and I'm going to be intentional about you enjoying your senses. You're literally doing counterculture stuff, revolutionary stuff, because you're asserting rest and you're asserting your own humanity. And whether you include physical intimacy or simply focus on the emotional connection, Tantra elevates love into a sacred experience. Does that make sense, everybody? Has anybody ever had any kind of experience with Tantra or doing anything like what I've just mentioned? Talk to me. Don't be shy, we're all grown.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. What a great presentation, Dr. Monikah Ogando. I love the stuff that you say. It's so necessary to people to hear, especially about presence and being with your partner and just being just there with no expectations and no plans. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And I remember in my last relationship when I did that, but I also remember that, you know, both people have to be ready for that. Both people have to be on board, and it doesn't work if only one half is like, I'm ready. I'm going to do this presence thing. I'm going to be with you. Another person is in Toledo in their brain.
Right.
So,
or in a trauma response.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, what?
Right. I don't know why I said Toledo, but that just came up. But what I wanted to say was I had an interesting experience a while ago, years ago, where just hugging somebody for the first time and you were talking about how things are, all things tantric are not sexual. I met somebody for the first time that I had never met before, but I think knew of me or knew about me, or in this day and age when we when we know about people, we see somebody we like, we can go online and see them right away. So I don't think she didn't see me before, but when she saw me, she goes, "Oh, you're Chase," and I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Wow, I've only heard you on the phone, but you seem so much more mature and older on the phone, and you look so young in person." I was like, "Oh, thanks." And then she reached out to shake my hand, and I said, "Let's just hug. I know about you, you know about me." And when I hugged her, something happened. Like, when somebody hugs you, "Hey, let me give you a hug." Da, 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 da. And I hugged her, and I was like, 1, 2, 3. She wasn't letting go, and
Oh,
it was a wonderful experience. And the reason why I bring it up is that um, in that moment, there was some transfer of energy, and that
yeah,
transfer of energy was it wasn't common.
yeah.
It was almost like in that moment she was using me as her charger. There was something going on where I hugged her, and she was like, "Oh, what is this?" And I didn't even think she knew she wasn't letting go. I didn't. I was the first time I ever met her. It was
Yeah,
bizarre,
yeah.
and I remember her walking away, and then later she told me, "Yeah, you charged me up that day. Something happened. Like it was like an electric connection, and I needed that, and I didn't know it was going to
Wow.
come from you. It was like a magnet." And I was like, "Wow." In that moment,
Yeah.
I think can happen with other people, just like mentally. It's happened, in my world a few times. But I just appreciate
Yeah.
you bringing up these things about that. That was one of those moments to me. I don't know if we could call that tantric, but some stuff was going on that was just crazy, and it never happened like that. It was just that one moment, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
maybe we don't expect it, or maybe we don't take those moments seriously. We think it's some sort of fluke or some sort of weird,
No, it's
oh,
not
that was
weird at
nothing.
all.
But it's
Or
not
a
weird at all.
fluke. No, it's just that because it's like this unconscious competence, right? It's like we were
Right,
knowing how to do this when we were children. The first language we ever speak is
right,
energy.
right. The first language we ever speak is energy. See, that's why I watch this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. I always love it when you're here. Yeah, there's um we kind of have been trained out of understanding our own um proficiency in the language of energy. Sometimes we go into a room and like, something don't feel right. Or that we can walk into a friend having a conversation and we know that we just interrupted an argument or something, even though you haven't heard anything, right? So yes, give yourself credit for knowing how to speak energy. And the thing about language, energy being our first language, is that it isn't codified. It's not codified by an alphabet or by syntax or orthography or spelling or subject predicate syntax or none of that. It's a gut feeling. And because it cannot be codified, it cannot be manipulated. And so that's why it's such a genuine way of connecting with another person. It's like you either feel it or you don't feel it. And you might feel it and the other person doesn't, which means the energy is not reciprocated. And that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own experience. But yeah, you can really just be present. When I took a course in Tantra and I became a certified Tantra practitioner for that reason. Because I wanted to know, I wanted to give respect to the science of it, to the art of it, without it just being like this willy-nilly energy thing that I either feel or don't. Like I wanted to understand it and become more proficient in it. And what I'm here to say is that, we are tantric beings, whether we acknowledge it or not, or whether we leverage it or not. So yeah, we might as well own it, especially here in spiritual matters. Who else has something? Who else has something? Mhm.
Wife and I tried that a few times, and every time we do, we ask ourselves, why don't we do that more often? And then we still
Yeah,
end up not doing it more often. Right?
yeah, I
So
know.
But yeah, right. But it does make a difference. It really, really does. It can be a
Yeah.
little uncomfortable at first,
At
right?
first,
When you're breathing, yeah, at first it can be a little uncomfortable, but yeah, yeah.
the simplest, most innocent example of having a tantric experience with somebody is, have you ever, maybe it was your own child or a friend's child or your child or whatever, but when you were picking up a baby and the baby just nuzzles their head over here on your neck, and then you smell their neck and they smell like baby and it's so delicious and you're like, oh, I could eat up this little baby, so cute. And you just want to hold them and you just want to caress them, you just want to smell them, and they just love being in your arms and they feel warm and safe. And there's no agenda except you're just enjoying the baby and the baby's enjoying you. And then eventually the baby's done being held. And it's like, okay, put me down. Or I want mama, or it's time to eat, or it's time to sleep, or whatever. And then the moment's over. That's a perfect example of a tantric experience with another human being. Just happens to be a baby, and so we don't assign so much expectation onto a baby. We don't expect them to say I love you back, or to show up in a certain way, or to have a particular physical response, or da da da. And because there's no agenda, it can really just be pure presence. That's the perfect example of that. Thank you, Stan, for your contribution. Who else has something? That's it? That's all you had to say about Tantra?
Doc, can I say this too?
Oh, yeah.
You can kind of, I've kind of played around with it, here and there, and I always say, why don't I do this more? So that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation. But you can take it even out of the context of with another human being. You can do that with your environment, with objects in your room. You can say, when's the last time you just really paid attention to, rather than looking out of your window, but just look at the window.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to things in the environment, and it changes the whole experience that you have with it.
You're absolutely right. You know what, Stan? You're reminding me of when I was actually going through my Tantra training, my coach asked me to, contact me, email me, text me, whatever, anytime that you feel like you got to work through something. And at the time I was visiting my daughter in San Diego. She's in the Navy, and she was based out of San Diego for a bit before she moved somewhere else. And I was visiting her in San Diego, and she was at work, and I took myself out on a little like solo date. I was gonna do some writing, etc. And I was wearing this like frilly top, like my shoulders were bare, and I was wearing this beautiful long skirt and sandals. It was windy. San Diego was a little bit of windy. It's not completely hot, even though it's California. And I walked out and I could feel the wind in my hair. My hair was longer at the time, and I could feel like the trees were swaying, and I could feel the ground under my feet. I could feel like when I was grabbing the handle in the car, I could feel how strong that metal was. Like it was so sensual. I could feel everything. I could see it, hear it, taste it. You know what I mean? And I was like, this is no wonder people shut down, because this is like a lot of input. This is a lot of stimulus. It's like the world is coming at me right now. I feel like the entire world is making love to me right now. Like the trees and the air and the birds singing and this and the third. And she was like, yeah, that's Tantra. And I was like, child, this is why some people shut it down, because if I were living like, I need a nap. This was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, with your environment. This is a great point. Good stuff. Thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate you entertaining my topic today. Remember to laugh a lot, love generously, give of yourself, your energy, your time, your attention. Eat more plant-based food, stress less, exercise. Remember that twerking is a kundalini raising practice. Sleep at least 7 to 8 hours. I always suggest 9 or 10. Don't be greedy. I mean, don't be stingy with yourself. And then of course, always audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love you. See you next time.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.